wrote about the manipulated man. She said he's just a puppet in a woman's hand. She said a man is like a child who is condemned to play the same game for the rest of his life until he's dead. La 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 la. Na 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 na. La na 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 na. La 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 na na na. She said a man is always searching for somebody to enslave him, so he chases women thinking they can.
In 1971, a woman called Esther Vilar wrote a book called The Manipulated Man. And the basic idea behind that book is that women systematically manipulate and exploit men for their own benefit, while men are largely unaware of this manipulation. In the book, she argues that women condition men from an early age to become willing providers and protectors, while women themselves avoid difficult or unpleasant work. She also said that women use sex and the promise of care as tools to control men, encouraging them to work hard and earn money, which ends up in their hands. She also suggests that men are trained to derive their sense of self-worth from their ability to provide for women, while women are free to pursue easier and more comfortable lives. And she says this is basically a form of slavery, with men working for women's benefit without realizing their own exploitation and even getting a sense of meaning from it. Naturally, after she wrote this controversial book, she received death threats from both men and women, which of course means she was speaking the truth. So in this video, I'm going to go into some of the ideas she discusses in the book, which are unfortunately still relevant today, even though the book was written more than 30 years ago. An important thing to point out though is that in the book, she is basically talking about what I call the inauthentic woman, or the manipulated woman. Unfortunately, most women are the inauthentic woman, which is why this information needs to be heard by not just men, but women as well, because the behaviors and mentality described in the book are the result of the mind control that most women have been placed under. Many men who have seen the truth of what Esther Vilar wrote about in the book choose to basically walk away from women and forming relationships with them, and they basically go their own way. But part of the solution to this problem is for men and authentic women who can see through the mind control to explain to women what has been done to them. So The Manipulated Man isn't just essential reading for men. I think it's also important for women to read it, even though it might trigger most of them. Anyway, this is how the book begins.
The slave's happiness. The lemon-coloured MG skids across the road, and the woman driver brings it to a somewhat uncertain halt. She gets out and finds her left front tyre flat. Without wasting a moment, she prepares to fix it. She looks towards the passing cars as if expecting someone. Recognising this standard international sign of woman in distress, weak female let down by male technology, a station wagon draws up. The driver sees what is wrong at a glance and says comfortingly, "Don't worry, we'll fix that in a jiffy." To prove his determination, he asks for her jack. He does not ask if she is capable of changing the tyre herself, because he knows, she's about 30, smartly dressed and made up, that she is not. Since she cannot find a jack, he fetches his own, together with his other tools. 5 minutes later, the job is done, and the punctured tyre properly stowed. His hands are covered with grease. She offers him an embroidered handkerchief, which he politely refuses. He has a rag for such occasions in his toolbox. The woman thanks him profusely, apologising for her typically feminine helplessness. She might have been there till dusk, she says, had he not stopped. He makes no reply, and as she gets back into the car, gallantly shuts the door for her. Through the rolled-down window, he advises her to have her tyre patched at once, and she promises to get her garage man to see to it that very evening. Then she drives off. As the man collects his tools and goes back to his own car, he wishes he could wash his hands. His shoes, he has been standing in the mud while changing the tyre, are not as clean as they should be. He is a salesman. What is more, he will have to hurry to keep his next appointment. As he starts the engine, he thinks, women, one's more stupid than the next. He wonders what she would have done if he had not been there to help. He puts his foot on the accelerator and drives off, faster than usual. There is the delay to make up. After a while, he starts to hum to himself. In a way, he is happy. Almost any man would have behaved in the same manner, and so would most women. Without thinking, simply because men are men and women so different from them, a woman will make use of a man whenever there is an opportunity. What else could the woman have done when her car broke down? She has been taught to get a man to help. Thanks to his knowledge, he was able to change the tyre quickly and at no cost to herself. True, he ruined his clothes, put his business in jeopardy, and endangered his own life by driving too fast afterwards. Had he found something else wrong with her car, however, he would have repaired that too. That is what his knowledge of cars is for. Why should a woman learn to change a flat when the opposite sex, half the world's population, is able and willing to do it for her? Women let men work for them, think for them, and take on their responsibilities. In fact, they exploit them. Yet since men are strong, intelligent, and imaginative, while women are weak, unimaginative, and stupid, why isn't it men who exploit women? Could it be that strength, intelligence, and imagination are not prerequisites for power, but merely qualifications for slavery? Could it be that the world is not being ruled by experts, but by beings who are not fit for anything else, by women? And if this is so, how do women manage it so that their victims do not feel themselves cheated and humiliated, but rather believe to be themselves what they are least of all, masters of the universe? How do women manage to instill in men this sense of pride and superiority that inspires them to ever greater achievements? Why are women never unmasked? What is man? A man is a human being who works. By working, he supports himself, his wife, and his wife's children. A woman, on the other hand, is a human being who does not work, or at least only temporarily. Most of her life she supports neither herself nor her children, let alone her husband. Any qualities in a man that a woman finds useful, she calls masculine. All others, of no use to her or to anyone else for that matter, she chooses to call effeminate. A man's appearance has to be masculine if he wants to have success with women, and that means it will have to be geared to his one and only raison d'etre, work. His appearance must conform to each and every task put to him, and he must always be able to fulfill it. No matter what a particular man does or how he spends his day, he has one thing in common with all other men. He spends it in a degrading manner, and he himself does not gain by it. It is not his own livelihood that matters. He would have to struggle far less for that, since luxuries do not mean anything to him anyway. It is the fact that he does it for others that makes him so tremendously proud. He will undoubtedly have a photograph of his wife and children on his desk, and will miss no opportunity to hand it around. No matter what a man's job may be, bookkeeper, doctor, bus driver, or managing director, every moment of his life will be spent as a cog in a huge and pitiless system, a system designed to exploit him to the utmost, to his dying day. It may be interesting to add up figures and make them tally, but surely not year in, year out. How exciting it must be to drive a bus through a busy town. But always the same route at the same time, in the same town, day after day, year after year. What a magnificent feeling of power to know that countless workers obey one's command. But how would one feel if one suddenly realised one was their prisoner and not their master? We have long ceased to play the games of childhood. As children, we became bored quickly and changed from one game to another. A man is like a child who is condemned to play the same game for the rest of his life. The reason is obvious. As soon as he is discovered to have a gift for one thing, he is made to specialise. Then because he can earn more money in that field than another, he is forced to do it forever. If he was good at maths in school, if he had a head for figures, he will be sentenced to a lifetime of figure work as a bookkeeper, mathematician or computer operator. For there lies his maximum work potential. Therefore he will add up figures, press buttons and add up more figures. But he will never be able to say, "I'm bored, I want to do something else." The woman who is exploiting him will never permit him to look for something else. Driven by this woman, he may engage in a desperate struggle against competitors to improve his position, and perhaps even become head clerk or managing director of a bank. But isn't the price he is paying for his improved salary rather too high? A man who changes his way of life, or rather his profession, for life and profession are synonymous to him, is considered unreliable. If he does it more than once, he becomes a social outcast and remains alone. The fear of being rejected by society must be considerable. Why else will a doctor, who as a child liked to observe tadpoles in jam jars, spend his life opening up nauseating growths, examining and pronouncing on human excretions? Why else does he busy himself night and day with people of such repulsiveness that everyone else is driven away? Does a pianist who, as a child, liked to tinkle on the piano, really enjoy playing the same Chopin nocturne over and over again all his life? Why else does a politician who, as a schoolboy, discovered the techniques of manipulating people successfully continue as an adult, mouthing words and phrases as a minor government functionary? Does he actually enjoy contorting his face and playing the fool and listening to the idiotic chatter of other politicians? Surely he must once have dreamed of a different kind of life. Even if he became President of the United States, wouldn't the price be too high? No, one can hardly assume men do all this for pleasure and without feeling a desire for change. They do it because they have been manipulated into doing it. Their whole life is nothing but a series of conditioned reflexes, a series of animal acts. A man who is no longer able to perform these acts, whose earning capacity is lessened, is considered a failure. He stands to lose everything: wife, family, home, his whole purpose in life, all the things, in fact, which give him security. Chapter 3. What is woman? A woman, as we have already said, is, in contrast to a man, a human being who does not work. One might leave it at that, for there isn't much more to say about her, were the basic concept of human being not so general and inexact in embracing both man and woman. Life offers the human being two choices: animal existence, a lower order of life, and spiritual existence. In general, a woman will choose the former and opt for physical well-being, a place to breed, and an opportunity to indulge unhindered in her breeding habits. At birth, men and women have the same intellectual potential. There is no primary difference in intelligence between the sexes. It is also a fact that potential left to stagnate will atrophy. Women do not use their mental capacity. They deliberately let it disintegrate. After a few years of sporadic training, they revert to a state of irreversible mental torpor. Why do women not make use of their intellectual potential? For the simple reason that they do not need to. It is not essential for their survival. Theoretically, it is possible for a beautiful woman to have less intelligence than a chimpanzee and still be considered an acceptable member of society. By the age of 12 at the latest, most women have decided to become, Or to put it another way, they have planned a future for themselves, which consists of choosing a man and letting him do all the work. In return for his support, they are prepared to let him make use of their vagina at certain given intervals. The minute a woman has made this decision, she ceases to develop her mind. She may, of course, go on to obtain various degrees and diplomas. These increase her market value in the eyes of men, for men believe that a woman who can recite things by heart must also know and understand them. But any real possibility of communication between the sexes ceases at this point. Their paths are divided forever. One of man's worst mistakes, and one he makes over and over again, is to assume that woman is his equal, that is, a human being of equal mental and emotional capacity. A man may observe his wife, listen to her, judge her feelings by her reactions, but in all this he is judging her only by outward symptoms, for he is using his own scale of values. He knows what he would say, think, and do if he were in her shoes. When he looks at her depressing ways of doing things, he assumes there must be something that prevents her from doing what he himself would have done in her position. This is natural, as he considers himself the measure of all things, and rightly so, if humans define themselves as beings capable of abstract thought. When a man sees a woman spending hours cooking, washing dishes, and cleaning, it never occurs to him that such jobs probably make her quite happy, since they are exactly at her mental level. Instead, he assumes that this drudgery prevents her from doing all those things which he himself considers worthwhile and desirable. Therefore, he invents automatic dishwashers, vacuum cleaners, and pre-cooked foods to make her life easier and to allow her to lead the dream life he himself longs for. But he will be disappointed, rarely using the time she has gained to take an active interest in history, politics, or astrophysics. Woman bakes cakes, irons underclothes, and makes ruffles and frills for blouses, or, if she is especially enterprising, covers her bathroom with flower decals. It is natural, therefore, that man assumes such things to be the essential ingredients of gracious living. This idea must have been instilled by woman, as he himself really doesn't mind if his cakes are store-bought, his underpants unironed, or his bathroom devoid of flowery patterns. He invents cake mixes to liberate her from drudgery, automatic irons and toilet paper holders already covered with flower patterns to make gracious living easier to attain. And still women take no interest in serious literature, politics, or the conquest of the universe. For her, this newfound leisure comes just at the right moment. At last she can take in herself. Since a longing after intellectual achievements is alien to her, she concentrates on her external appearance. Yet even this occupation is acceptable to man. He really loves his wife and wants her happiness more than anything in the world. Therefore he produces non-smear lipstick, waterproof mascara, home permanents, no iron frilly blouses, and throwaway underwear, always with the same aim in view. In the end, he hopes, this being whose needs seem to him so much sensitive, so much more refined, will gain freedom to achieve in her life the ideal state, which is his dream, to live the life of a free man. Then he sits back and waits. Finally, as woman does not come to him of her own free will, he tries to tempt her into his world. He offers her co-education so that she is accustomed to his way of life from childhood. With all sorts of excuses, he gets her to attend his universities and initiates her into the mysteries of his own discoveries, hoping to awaken her interest in the wonders of life. He gives her access to the very last male strongholds, thereby relinquishing traditions sacred to him by encouraging her to make use of her right to vote, in the hope she will change the systems of government he has managed to think up so laboriously, according to her own ideas. Possibly he even hopes that she will be able to create peace in the world, for in his opinion, women are a pacifist influence. In all this he is so determined and pig-headed that he fails to see what a fool he is making of himself, ridiculous by his own standards, not those of women, who have absolutely no sense of humour. No, women do not laugh at men. At most they get irritated. The old institutions of house and home are not yet so obviously outdated and derelict that they can't justify relinquishing all their intellectual pursuits and renouncing all their claims to better jobs. One does wonder, however, what will happen when housework is still further mechanised, when there are enough good nursery schools nearby, or when, as must occur before long, men discover that children themselves are not essential. If only man would stop for one moment in his heedless rush towards progress and think about this state of affairs, he would inevitably realise that his efforts to give woman a sense of mental stimulation have been totally in vain. It is true that woman gets progressively more elegant, more well-groomed, more cultured, but her demands on life will always be material, never intellectual. Has she ever made use of the mental processes he teaches at his universities to develop her own theories? Does she do independent research in the institutes he has thrown open to her? Someday it will dawn on man that woman does not read the wonderful books with which he has filled his libraries. And though she may well admire his marvellous works of art in museums, she herself will rarely create, only copy. Even the plays and films, visual exhortations to woman on her own level to liberate herself, are judged only by their entertainment value. They will never be a first step to revolution. When a man, believing woman his equal, realises the futility of her way of life, he naturally tends to think that it must be his fault, that he must be suppressing her. But in our time, women are no longer subject to the will of men. Quite the contrary. They have been given every opportunity to win their independence, and if, after all this time, they have not liberated themselves and thrown off their shackles, we can only arrive at one conclusion. There are no shackles to throw off. It is true that men love women, but they also despise them. Anyone who gets up in the morning fresh and ready to conquer new worlds, with infrequent success, admittedly because he has to earn a living, is bound to despise someone who simply isn't interested in such pursuits. Contempt may even be one of the main reasons for his efforts to further the mental development of a woman. He feels ashamed of her and assumes that she too must be ashamed of herself. So being a gentleman, he tries to help. Men seem incapable of realising that women entirely lack ambition, desire for knowledge and need to prove themselves, all things which, to him, are a matter of course. They allow men to live in a world apart because they do not want to join them. Why should they? The sort of independence men have means nothing to women, because women don't feel dependent. They are not even embarrassed by the intellectual superiority of men because they have no ambition in that direction. There is one great advantage which women have over men. They have a choice between the life of a man and the life of a dim-witted, parasitic luxury item. There are too few women who would not select the latter. Men do not have this choice. If women really felt oppressed by men, they would have developed hate and fear for them, as the oppressed always do. But women do not fear men, much less hate them. If they really felt humiliated by men's mental superiority, they would have used every means in their power to change the situation. If women really felt unfree, Surely at such a favourable time in their history, they would have broken free of their oppressors. In Switzerland, one of the most highly developed countries of the world, where until recently women were not allowed to vote, in a certain canton, it is reported, the majority of women were against introducing the vote for women. The Swiss men were shattered, for they saw in this unworthy attitude yet another proof of centuries of male oppression. How very wrong they were. Women feel anything but oppressed by men. On the contrary, one of the many depressing truths about the relationship between the sexes is simply that man hardly exists in a woman's world. Man is not even powerful enough to revolt against. Woman's dependence on him is only material, of a physical nature, something like a tourist's dependence on an airline, a cafe proprietor's on his espresso machine, a car's on gasoline, or a television set's on electric current. Such dependencies hardly involve agonizing.
She wrote about the manipulated man. She said he's just a puppet in a woman's hand. She said a man is like a child who is condemned to play the same game for the rest of his life until he's dead. La la la.